Leadership is something that's sought after by organisations, by teams, and within our political system. The world is starving for great leadership, but here's the thing, leaders are flawed. Everybody knows it, and yet most people in leadership roles don't or even won't talk about it. My name's David Coombe, and I'm an executive and leadership coach, and I work with leaders just like you to help understand the relationship between your choices, your behaviours, and ultimately your success. If I were to ask you right now, what's the one thing that you'd most want to improve about yourself as a leader? I'm willing to bet that you'd be able to answer that question without much thought. It probably plays on your mind. And if there was some thought, it was probably because you couldn't decide which of your development areas you'd pick as the one thing. However you became aware of it, it's there and it plays on your mind. And it's important for you to understand that it's stopping you from reaching your potential. I'm willing to bet that you don't discuss it, and you may even actively try to hide it. Here's the thing you need to be aware of: everybody's flawed. In spite of you being in a leadership position, you are not infallible. Do not expect that the more senior you become, that your flaws will simply disappear. In fact, you can probably expect that you'll be more aware of them and you'll be harder on yourself than you will be of others. I held leadership roles for more than 15 years and continually during that time held a judgment of myself about what I thought I was doing well and not so well. I was my own worst critic. Maybe you can sympathise. The number of people in senior roles that have some form of imposter syndrome is widespread. And in fact, it was identified as the #1 fear of executives in a study performed in 2016, published in Harvard Business Review. So you're amongst great company. We are all flawed in any number of ways. Acknowledge it, and then you can do something about it. So you have your one thing in mind. I want you to ponder this thought. What if I were to ask my leader, my peers, or my team, what one thing do they think I should work on? What's the likelihood they'll say the same thing as you? They'll likely have a different response, and there are many reasons for this, so it's a topic for a later discussion. So back to that question. You've taken some time to self-assess, and you consider how you're perceived by those around you. What's the one thing you most want to improve about yourself as a leader? Name it. What behaviour do you need to change? When and how does that behaviour show up? Maybe you can be dismissive, lose your temper, or controlling in conversations. You are defining what needs to change. Ask yourself, how do I know it's time to run that pattern? I spoke with a leader recently who was working on some 360 feedback that her staff didn't feel heard, that she'd already decided what she was going to do, and that any discussions were a token effort to engage with the team. The feedback was tough to receive, and so she spent some time to consider what she was doing that was being interpreted that way before she could determine what the next step was. What alternate behaviours would achieve my desired outcome? Ask yourself, what do I prefer to think, say, or do instead? This is where you really need to consider what a better outcome is going to be and to understand what actions need to be undertaken to achieve a better outcome. What roadblocks do you foresee preventing you from performing those activities? What can you foresee getting in the way? Your behaviours have developed over months and years. They're a part of you and have served a purpose. So what need is it serving? Behaviours develop over time for any number of reasons. The important thing to note is that they do so often to meet a need, either consciously or unconsciously. Then wash, rinse, and repeat. Behaviour is typically a stimulus response to a particular scenario or input. So changes in behaviour require a continual process of reassessment. How am I doing? What worked, what didn't, and what do I do next? The most important thing in changing that one thing is to start. So here's a quick recap. 1. What's the one thing? Take the time to understand when it shows up. 2. What do I wish to do instead? What behaviours would drive a better outcome? 3. What roadblocks can I foresee? What would stop me from successfully changing my old pattern? What strategies can I use to avoid these roadblocks? And then 4, wash, rinse, and repeat. You may be thinking that people find change difficult and that I have oversimplified what it takes to change. The process really isn't more difficult than that. What's difficult is responding differently when you face your day-to-day events. A changed person will not remain so if they return to an unchanged environment. What that means is that people will often revert to old patterns when they are under duress from a typical stressor or stimulus. Or put another way, they return to what's familiar because it's a well-worn path. Change requires support, the right support, and I truly believe that given the right support, anyone can achieve the changes they set for themselves. I hope the last few minutes has been helpful. Leadership development is incredibly rewarding, both from the perspective of the impact you have on those around you, and more importantly, on your own ability to grow as a person. The most important resource you have as a leader is your resourcefulness. And remember, you're not alone. If you need some support through the process of growing yourself, your team, or your company, please do reach out. I want to thank you for investing your time in watching the last few minutes, and I hope that I've been able to serve you in achieving your goals. Until we speak, I wish you continued success. Have an outstanding day.